everyone, my name is Yulia Gorenko and I will be the host of today's event. Let me tell you a little bit about our celebrity expert speaker, Mindy Weinstein. Mindy is the president and founder of Market MindShift. She's a trainer, digital marketing strategist. She has been named one of the top women in SEO. She co-authored numerous books, and she also is a professor at Grand Canyon University. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, psychology of search. Mindy will share her insights on how to blend psychology, marketing, and search engine optimization to attract the right visitors to your website. But before I hand it over to Mindy, let me introduce SEO ranking to you guys. Some of you might be familiar with SEO ranking. And by the way, if you're already using our tool, please let us know in the chat for how long you've been using SEO ranking and how do you like it so far. For those of you who are new to SEO ranking, let me tell you a few words about the tool. So SEO ranking is an all-in-one SEO software that makes SEO really simple. It is trusted by over 400,000 users all over the world. It offers some great features to help you grow your website, such as keyword research, keyword rank tracker for all major search engines. SEO ranking also allows you to do competitor analysis. All these and a lot of other helpful features and tools, both for individual users and for marketing agencies. And by the way, at the beginning of this month, SEO ranking rolled out a major platform update. The platform now is more powerful than ever. We managed to boost the data loading speed almost by 30 times. The user experience became really simple, smooth, and intuitive. So go ahead, check it out. It's really cool and super easy. You can give it a try by signing up for a 2-week free trial, no credit card information required. And let me tell you guys what you can expect from today's webinar. So we're going to have a presentation hosted by Mindy. After the presentation, we'll have about 10 minutes for your questions. So stick to the end and use your chance to get the answers straight from our guest expert.
Just to give a little bit more on my background, which I know, Julia, thank you. You gave a wonderful summary, but I want to explain a little bit about my journey in digital marketing. So I got started in digital marketing in 2007. So quite a few years ago, and I will tell you that things have changed a lot. So when I got started, it was very much on the marketing side, and I was doing a lot of content. And I did that for a few years. I was managing a team of content writers. When I started, I had a team of 4 writers. By the time I left this one particular agency, I had 40. So I had grown it quite a bit. But at that time, I also transitioned and took over the SEO team at this agency. And it was at that point that I really saw the other side of digital marketing. You know, you have so much you have to know about content because we're trying to get people to our website and we want to convert them, but we also have to make sure that we have the technical aspects right, that we're understanding search engines and all of that. And so once I got on the SEO side, I ended up being recruited by a company named after the owner, Bruce Clay, if you've ever heard of the company. And I learned a lot of technical SEO. So I was the SEO manager there for many years before I went on to do my own Market MindShift. So the reason I'm telling you all that is because I come at this from different angles. You know, I came very strongly from a marketing background, content, understanding users, and then I transitioned to, okay, well, let's understand the technical aspects. But really, when you marry those together, that's really where SEO is today. So there's so much psychology that we can't just focus on numbers alone in SEO. We have to actually know what's going through people's minds and, you know, how might they search for things? How do we find them? All of that. And so that kind of gives you just a little bit of a background there. And one more thing I want to mention too. So as you saw from my slide, actually, let me go back. I do teach, and so I teach at University of Denver and Grand Canyon University, and I'm working on my PhD. I think I'll be done next month, fingers crossed. So this is our agenda for today. So for today, we're going to be going over search intent, and we're going to get into keyword research, but I'm going to focus more on the user journey and how you take keywords and you really put them into each stage that someone's going to go through. And then we'll end with voice search, because voice search is obviously something that's really, changing the behavior of searchers. And so I want to touch on that because there is so much psychology that is involved on that side too. So quite a few things we'll get into. I'm going to give you some examples. I'll explain my processes. So just know that too, that I want to make sure that you're able to walk away with information that is something you can apply immediately. So let's get into the search intent side of things. And these are just my own little tips. And I know some of these things you already know, but just let's put it all out there because this is really what the presentation is built upon. SEO is about understanding the audience and building a search marketing campaign around that information. You might read that and you're like, okay, well, yeah, of course. But I will tell you, because I'm an SEO too, and like I said, I've been on the technical side, that it's really easy just to start looking at numbers. For example, you're doing keyword research and you're only focused on the search volume of keywords, or you're looking at traffic to the website and it's great, organic traffic's going up, but you're only looking at numbers of like, okay, well, this percentage increase. But do we really know who's coming to the website? And then in terms of those keywords, do we really know who is searching for those words? I know a lot of you probably do multiple things at your organizations, and I understand that. I've been doing these trainings for a long time, and a lot of times I'll ask the question if I'm doing a workshop, how many of you only do SEO? And it's very rare that I have someone raise their hand and they're like, that's all I do. Most of the time we're doing multiple things, but the reason I'm bringing that up is because SEO, you're responsible for, if you're doing that particular work, you're responsible for getting traffic to the website. But as you likely know, the next question that comes up from either your supervisors, your clients, whoever it might be is, well, how many of those converted? That's great, traffic went up, but are we actually getting sales? Are we getting new customers? And so, if you have multiple roles, that's very overwhelming because you're like, well, I can only spend so much time on SEO. But that's what I'm showing you today is let's get to the right people. And that's where the psychology comes in. So we got to understand our audience. So that is, I've mentioned already, SEO, it encompasses marketing, but really it incorporates psychology. And when we incorporate psychology, then our targeted traffic gets better, and then we're able to get more conversions. Just one other thing to step back. I mentioned my PhD. My PhD is in psychology, and I did that purposely because to me that is digital marketing. It's so much of psychology and understanding the user. And so that's where a lot of this is just stemming from, is that concept. So let's talk about first, how to understand and analyze our users. And so I'm going to make this very practical for you. So don't worry, it's not all theory. I'm going to give you some practical tips that you could apply. You can use your keywords. So if you already have a keyword list, that's great. And I imagine you do. You can use different tools to help you get demographic information behind those keywords. So I'm going to touch a little bit upon that. You can also analyze competing brands to see who their audience is. So if they're a brand that sells similar products as you or similar services, you can get a feel for the makeup of their audience. I'm talking about things in terms of demographics, interests, all of those things like other brands that they like. And you can use that to help you with SEO. So we'll get there. You can also use social platforms, as you likely know. So you could, if your company has a Facebook page, you can pull so much demographic information from there. So it's out there. The information is out there, and it is extra work. So as I just mentioned, some of you, I know you do multiple things, and so the idea of having to do extra work is just daunting. But trust me, it's worth it, and this type of extra research will pay off, and you'll get faster at it. So let me break it down into tools. So when I mentioned that you could use keywords to get demographic information, there are different ones out there that will give you that information. And the one that I've used for this particular exercise is demographics.io. And so what you can do is you can, I would say don't go through all your keywords because it would take you forever, but just pick your top 5 keywords and plug them into this tool. And you have to do it one at a time. And it will give you for that particular keyword and breakdown of who is searching for it. So I put in digital marketing, you can see the age range. You could also see the gender too. And so these tools, they're pulling from different APIs from the search engines. And so they're able to get this data. Now, one practical tip, so once you have this, if you're like, okay, well, that's great. I know now that more male versus females or females versus males are searching for this. I got an idea of the age range. Well, what you're going to actually do with that is then if you have a content team or you're part of the content, you need to keep that in mind, and you need to start building out a sketch of who is likely to search for this term to get to your website and build content to really round that person. So you can help inform the content team on this, or if you're also doing the content, you can keep this in mind as you're building out really your topics. And so it's important, and it's that extra step that helps you get the right audience. You can, as I mentioned, also analyze competing brands. And so this is something that I love to do. And I'm sure some of you are the same, because I feel like if you're in this line of work, you love digging into research. You know, I find myself often just spending time I call it rabbit holes. I go down rabbit holes where next thing I know, I've just gone and done all this research that I wasn't really planning to do, but it's so interesting. And so that's how I feel about analyzing competing brands. It's interesting the amount of data that you could actually uncover. And so what you're looking for when you're analyzing these brands is you're hoping to find content topics, because again, SEO, we have to have content and we have to get targeted users to our site. But when you're doing this research, you might also even find link building ideas. So if you discover that, gosh, your target customer happens to like this specific brand or likes to go to these websites or likes this publication, well, maybe there's opportunities for you to get your site either featured there or contribute an article or whatever it might be, but it's link building. And we know that link building is also part of SEO. So there's lots of tools. So I'm not going to leave you without some practical tips on that. So when you're looking at competing brands, you can use one tool called QuantCast. And so with QuantCast, you would basically just put in, again, a company, a brand that you know has a very similar audience as you, and it will give you a breakdown about them. And to me, this information is just gold. And so this one example, I actually just put in Goodreads. So I was doing some work for a client, and they were competing. Let me go back. They were competing with them. And so I put in Goodreads. I'm just showing you the demographic data, and I was able to see like a breakdown, gender, the age, income, education level, and then I could also get into interest. I mean, there were so many different things I can click on, but the interest is really important, because then I could get a feel for, well, what type of content should we create? I then was also able to look at other sites that they're frequenting and at those sites, you know, not all of them are going to be link building opportunities, but some of them might. And so I started to create a list of websites that we would want to reach out to. So remember, with link building, you know, we are trying to get that authority from getting the link. But there is also some marketing aspect, because if we're on that website, we're going to get in front of people, in front of our potential customer. So take that information, plug it into your link building tasks, and then also look at the content, because you're really trying to build out that target customer. So another one that I use for this exercise is Alexa. And so you can also, same thing as I use Goodreads again, but you can get a feel for the interest and some information there. And so they have a lot of audience analysis that you could get into. So different ways to go about it. But I would say, because I'm going to throw a lot of tools at you, is that don't do all of them. I mean, just pick one that you feel comfortable with, maybe a couple of them, and go that route instead. So the other thing, which I've already touched on a little bit, is, you know, gathering data from social platforms. And I actually didn't even have it in here, but you can, while I'm on the social platform side. As a lot of you know, you can go in and look at your information about your target or your visitors to your website in Google Analytics. So don't ignore that section in Google Analytics. Just a little story for you. I had a client that we did some optimization for, and they were in the auto industry, and they were selling these parts or accessories that were for high-end automobiles. And so we got them ranking for some great keywords. I mean, we were so excited. They were great keywords. We had them ranking #1. But what was interesting is they weren't getting conversions. And so we were trying to figure out what was going on. And so we looked at the information about the audience within Google Analytics and saw that, oh, wow, like the audience that we're getting does not fit their ideal customer, because it wasn't the right geographic area. It wasn't just the right interest overall. And so we had to pivot our keywords and go a different route. And so it is information that you'll use. So now for social platforms, you can, as I mentioned, if you have a Facebook page, you can pull a lot of demographic information from there. And you can figure out, who is it that's following your brand, liking your brand, and let's understand them a little bit better so that when we get to the point where we're trying to identify your keywords, identify the new content needed on our site, identify the link building opportunities, we know a lot about this person. Within Facebook, where you would go is, you can just go to the insights, look at the people, and that's going to give you that information that you need there too. And all of this, again, is designed to really just get that sketch of that person. And so this is so important. If you just jump right into SEO and you're like, I'm just doing keyword research and I'm going to start building up my list and creating content, well, you might be missing the boat, just like the example I gave you. And I know how to do all this, and I still, with that auto example I gave you, it happens. So you need to know what's going on and make sure you're getting the right people there. Another tool, or again, there's lots of tools. So you could also use follower wonk if you want to get an idea, let's say, of Twitter followers. And you can even look at your own platform, or you could look at competitors too. And what this does is it'll look at the bios of different people coming to your site or coming part of that Twitter follower group, and it'll find some common words that are in their bios. So it's pretty great. All right, so let's get into a little bit more about this. I've already kind of given you some of this information. So what are you doing with all of this, right? And so what you're wanting to look at is, what words are they using, and you can really get that like from this example. So if you use follower wonk and you put in a competitor's Twitter profile or your own company's Twitter profile, and you're able to get a feel for the audience, well, then we know that these are terms that your audience is likely using. I mean, they have these in their bio. So if this is your line of work, gosh, like we probably should be including those in our keyword list, and we should start optimizing for them. So that's the words they use. So those are keywords that you're going to focus on for optimization. Well, you also have to know what kind of questions people ask, and that's really important. And so I'm really going to dive into that more on the voice search side, but know what questions people ask, because that's going to help you get into featured snippets, and also just showing up in the section people also ask. And so we'll get into that, but it just shows how important understanding your audience is and how to apply this in your SEO work. Now, the last one, as I've already mentioned multiple times, websites they frequent. Well, those are going to be links. What links do we want to go after? All right, so I'm going to go through this part pretty quickly because I want to get into some more on the voice search. And so I know a lot of you might already be doing some of this, but I do want to touch on it. This is also where we get into more the marketing and research side and also psychology side of SEO. And it can be difficult. So this is going to depend on your bandwidth within your role at your organization or with your clients. So when we're trying to understand our users, and as a reminder, thinking about these things, what words they use, questions they ask, and websites they frequent, you can use some of the tools that I have mentioned. And we're also going to get into SE ranking, because that's obviously an amazing tool too. And so that should be your main tool. And the other ones I'm mentioning are just kind of may supplement, may add some other additional data, but we'll get there. So ways to collect data, interviews. So that's actually one of the easiest ways if you're really trying to understand your user and like what kind of words they use, what questions they ask. Well, one thing that you can do, and something I've done with clients and I've just asked, if they don't have all this information already available, I'll just say, can I talk to, your top 5 customers and just ask them some questions? And sometimes, they're open to that, sometimes they're not, but if they are, the questions you're going to ask are things like, how did you find the company? You can even say, what type of things are you searching for? And how does this, product or service solve your problems? And then you can kind of get a feel for how they're describing things. And you can even ask them what other websites did you visit while going through this user journey. If you are within an organization, so you're not in an agency, but you work for a company and you're working on the SEO and marketing, well, you can talk to other internal departments to get information too on all of this. So you could talk to your customer service, say, well, what kind of things are people asking when they call us? Or even your sales department and say, well, when people first contact you, how do they describe what they need? And they'll be able to give you a lot of great information. And pay careful attention to, again, the phrases that people are using and the questions they're asking. So surveys, this is another great way as you're trying to collect data. You can just, I mentioned interviews just a little bit ago, but you can even put that into a survey and send it out to existing customers and try to get some information just to get to know them better. Once you start putting this together, you can start creating personas. So if you're at an organization that's already put together personas, which is, if you're not familiar with that, that's basically a sketch of the ideal customer. So you take all of this real data, all of this real research, you put it together, you find the common characteristics, and then you do a sketch of that person. And I say sketch, I mean, you're like listing what, describing who that person is, what are their interests, and all of that. And so if you already have that, that's fantastic. And a lot of organizations don't have that created, and that's okay. I'm going to show you how to do it in a second. But all that data you're collecting will really help you on that side. So one tool that I've used for understanding demographics, in addition to the other ones I mentioned, this is a paid tool that's called Demographics Pro, and you can analyze Instagram profile, a Twitter profile, Facebook, and it's going to give you a 30-page document of basically all the demographic statistics. So you can see this audience profile here where they'll actually give you a summary. So it'll give you a nice little summary on the first page, and I can see that, okay, let's say that my audience was similar to Starbucks' audience. Well, I know that Starbucks, a lot of people who are following them, they're nurses, they're stylists, they're realtors, they're chefs. So that might help me as I'm trying to figure out like where to do my link building. They're interested in eating out and political news. They're interested in hockey, baseball, and skating. So if I'm doing any kind of content marketing, I might think about how I can relate like coffee drinking and hockey. Not really sure how to do that, but kind of think about that. I can figure out too what other brands they like and what they're talking about. So just really interesting information that you could apply. So once you have all this data, if you don't have a persona, you're basically going to take it, you're going to summarize it, and you can even just use HubSpot's free tool, just make my persona, and they actually have fields for you to fill out. Super easy, and then it gives you like a nice document that describes your personas. Because then what's going to happen is once you have those personas, all the things I mentioned on the SEO side, but it also just makes all your SEO become more real. Because now it's not just numbers, like you're actually picturing, I'm going after this particular person who cares about this, who has these interests, who has these questions, who lives in this particular city, who, you can go on and on. More real makes for way better SEO work. Your keyword research will be better, your content marketing will be stronger, you'll have a much better link building campaign too. So still talking about users though, I want to switch gears a little bit. Once we're figuring out, okay, especially on the keyword side, what are they searching for? And we've done our research, we know the demographics. We're going to get into actually more keyword research in a moment. But if we have that keyword list already and we're ready to actually create content for the site so that it's optimized for those keywords, we need to take an extra step. So it is an extra step for you, but it's not a hard step. You need to think about search intent. And so search intent, if you've ever looked at some articles about it, especially Google has some great articles, there's all these different what they call micro moments that people might have. So they might have different intents along the way. I'm going to just focus on two. So I'm going to focus on I want to know something and I want to buy something. And this is really, really important in SEO. And I'm going to give you some of my inside tips that not everyone does, and some give you a little glimpse into this whole concept. You have to know with a particular keyword, when someone searches that, are they wanting to know something? So they just want information. And is that what Google believes that they want? Or are they ready to make a purchase? And so that's really important, and we're going to get into that. And part of what happens is the way you set that page up is going to be different, whether it's a no intent or a buy intent. So I'm going to show you some examples. So here is one where Google looks at the searches, I want to know something. So let's say that you are in the business of selling cars and you want to rank for the phrase fuel efficient car because you've already done all that research I've showed you, the demographics, all of that, it's a really good keyword. Well, Google looks at this keyword with an intent of no. So people aren't wanting to buy necessarily if they're searching for fuel efficient car. Instead, they want to do some research. So that's what I mean. So what this means for you is that if you are trying to rank for fuel efficient car, don't optimize a page that's like a product page for a fuel efficient car and hope that you're going to rank #1 in Google, because that's not what Google considers to be the intent behind this keyword. Instead, you would create an article that's optimized for fuel efficient car, or you might have a guide that gets into it, but some kind of information that's going to inform the reader because they want to know something. So for you to like figure this out, it's actually pretty easy. I just make it simple and I go to Chrome and I do incognito mode, and then I'll do my search and I'll just eyeball the search results. Now we do know that incognito mode is not necessarily foolproof, but meaning that you'll still get some bias in your search, but it does make it really easy to get some of this information. But again, what I mentioned, if you're trying to get fuel efficient car, a product page to rank for that, you're gonna have a very hard time because Google does not view the intent to be a buy intent. But let's switch gears. So let's say that you're trying to rank for cars for sale. Well, obviously, intuitively, you would know, well, that's probably a buy intent. But this is just really for the sake of an example. So I put this keyword in there, and you can see that sure enough, all the results that show up are pages where people can go and they're ready to buy. And so if I was trying to get an article I wrote about, you know, cars for sale, how to find the right car, and it was an article, probably not going to rank very well. That I want to look at some type of product or page that's meant to convert right away. So it's really important to take this step. So those two examples, or especially this last one's pretty obvious, but let me do some more. So I had a client who offered services. So they were landscape services for commercial buildings. And one of the phrases that they wanted to show up for was safe weed removal. Well, I could have just optimized their service page for safe weed removal, but that wasn't going to work because I took the extra step and I did some research and I looked it up and realized that, gosh, everything showing up about safe weed removal, they're articles, they're guides. And so instead what we did is we created this long blog post, and it was all about safe weed removal for your commercial building, and we're able to get that page to show up. If we had focused only on that services page that just didn't have a lot of content, it wouldn't have done as well. So here's another example, because I'm giving you examples of it's like one or the other, but you're going to have situations where you put in a keyword and you're like, okay, well, it looks like you can know something or you could buy something or do something. I threw that in there for you now. And that's okay. So let's say that I was trying to rank for organic coffee and I did this little exercise I just showed you. Well, Google's showing both. So for Google, they think that if you're typing in organic coffee, you might want to do some research, or you might want to buy. And so in that situation, I can focus on either type of page. I can create a product page that's optimized for organic coffee, or I can create an article and I'm still going to be okay. But here's where I would do this in the process, just to kind of make this again more practical. Once you have your keywords, I would just pick maybe the top 5 that you really want to rank for. If you already have pages on your website that you're trying to optimize for these, look at them really closely. So do this exercise, take 5 of those keywords, put them in one at a time, get a feel for what's showing up, and then decide, okay, does the page we have right now, is it going to work? Does it really show the no intent, or does it show the buy intent? If you're creating, and if it doesn't, fix it. If it does, great. And then if you don't have pages and you need new ones, then what you're going to do is, okay, for like this example, safe weed removal, okay, here's a phrase we want to rank for. We need to create new content. Let's make sure the content is a blog post. So it's really that simple. This step does not take very long. It's well worth it. You could also, if you really like diving in deep and you like doing things like scraping search results, here's an article. It's a couple years old, but it's really good, where you can go through and you can scrape Google search result pages to really identify the search intent. So that's another thing that you can do too. So I'll leave this out here for a moment just so you can see it. All right, so search behavior, as you know, right now with our pandemic, it has changed a lot. And you might have been dealing with this right now, working on SEO. I know I certainly have with different clients, and I have clients that are in different industries. And so what each one's been facing has been really unique to them, meaning they're different clients are dealing with different things. And so it's hard from an SEO perspective because we don't even have all of the keyword data we need yet, but we need to understand trends. And so I'm going to show you what I've been doing. So as I mentioned, search behaviors changed in our dynamic environment. So let's go to Google Trends for a moment. I have been spending a lot more time than normal in Google Trends. And so if you don't ever go into Google Trends, I'd encourage you to do so, because especially right now with things changing so much, you need to see what's going on. So of course, not shocking, just going to Google Trends itself, this is what you see, it's talking about the coronavirus search trends. Well, COVID-19 has very much changed in a lot of businesses what people are searching for. And I'm going to show you some examples here in a moment. Remote learning, that's a phrase. So remote learning wasn't something that we were all searching that much before the pandemic hit. So this trending line that I'm showing you, it's over the past year, but you can see it's pretty low, meaning, people are searching for remote learning, but it wasn't a super high number. Well, come March, okay, what happened? Everything changed, right? All of a sudden there was a spike in what people were searching for in specifics to remote learning. Now people are searching for it because, one, there's the education side of remote learning. Kids were now at home trying to learn, but a lot of organizations were looking at remote learning. How can we change things? And so you can see it spiked, then it went down a bit, and then it started to go back up again. And I have one client that this is their industry. They have, online learning and training and all of that. And so for them, this was really important information. We wanted to know what people were searching. And so we took a lot of the insights we were able to get from Google Trends. So some of the trending keywords that were related to them, to my client, and we were able to come up with content topics. And I'll tell you now, when I go into Google Search Console, I can see that they're ranking for all these different phrases now that we started seeing spike during this time because we created content and because we optimized for it. So it works, especially right now in this environment. Now here's a completely different example, banana bread. So that happened to be a high trending search during when people were stuck at home. And so I have another client that they produce recipes. And so we actually spent some time trying to figure out what type of recipes people were looking for as they were quarantined. And we saw there was a spike in banana bread, again, of all things. And so that was helpful information from an SEO perspective because we didn't have a recipe for banana bread. But then we saw this data and we're like, okay, let's start to create content that's going to focus on that. So I would say for right now, look at Google Trends because you're going to see things that are changing. You're going to find keywords that you can start targeting, and you're going to be able to create content that's optimized for that. Now let's keep continuing because I do want to get through some keywords and voice search, and then we'll open it up to some questions. But when you think about keywords, I've been talking a lot about users, and then we got into user intents and then how things are changing in our environment. But we do still know that people go through a journey when they're trying to make decisions. And so it's important when you're thinking about keywords and research, how do you determine what keywords they're going to search for based on what stage they are in their journey? And when I say journey, I mean they're on that process to making a purchase, to hiring your company. Really, with understanding the user journey, it's knowing your customer, so all the things that I just talked about, and then it's determining all the different steps of different things they're going to search along the way, making sure that you have those keywords optimized for your site and you do have the right content for them. So everyone's going to go on a journey. That's the way it works. I'll tell you, even yesterday, I went on a journey of trying to find one of the portable Wi-Fi or hotspots because I've been doing a lot of traveling, localized traveling, but in a lot of places with bad Wi-Fi. So I went through a whole journey and trying to figure out the right device to purchase. So we do go through journeys. When it comes to the journey, we need to make sure that we're using the right keywords again. So I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment, but this is really where we're going to get some more tools, and definitely use SEO ranking for this. The keyword research and all that's amazing. And so I'm going to show you that in a moment. But you're going to look at keywords and you're going to really focus though on what's relevant to the user. And then you're going to look at search volume, but don't get caught up just on search volume. So with SEO ranking, I went back to my example of fuel efficient car. So with keyword research, as you know, it's a lot of just trial and error. But what I do first is I'll just write down a list, literally write down a list of keywords that I believe people are searching for, come up with a pretty long list, and then I'll start using SEO ranking, and I'll look at some of these top keywords that I found in my list, and I'll start even plugging them in because then I can see some other keyword ideas and I can start building out my list. Well, fuel efficient car, I showed you, that in the process, the journey of buying a car, someone's looking at that, but they're still just wanting to know something. But I can take SE ranking, put in fuel efficient car, and get some other ideas. So I can create content that talks about the most fuel efficient car. I can put in a whole variety of keywords based on what I know people are searching for. So I can get my related keywords, and I can get an idea of really what's converting. And even though we're talking about SEO, I'll still look at the cost per click number, because that tells me that there's a return on investment for this keyword. Because if people are willing to bid and pay for it, then it likely does pretty well in conversion. And so use your tools, use SE ranking, create your list that looks for other keywords, because then you're going to take those keywords and you're going to start plugging them into the user journey. But you have to know, like, again, what people are searching for to even get to that step. Another tool, and this is really not in place what I just showed you with SE ranking, this is just like a brainstorming tool, if anything else. If you're trying to optimize for a specific product or service that you're just really not sure what people would search for, you can use seed keywords, and it's free, but you basically just create a search scenario and creates a unique URL for you. So you might just say, like, you are going on vacation, you need to find a hotel in, New York. What would you search for? And you can send that URL to people who are similar to your target audience, and they can just put in like examples of what they would search. And then what it does is it just creates a list for you. So things you might not have thought about. I did this for a client that was trying to go after a young demographic, college age, and they were trying to go after college age that they believed would be looking for funny pictures. And as you can see, I'm not college age. And so I came up with my own list, but then I sent this out to some college students. And the results I got back of what they would search for were things that, like, I never would have thought about. And so it was great because I was able to take that and add those keywords. All right, so let's get into mapping keywords to the journey. So we want to make sure that no matter which stage someone is in when they're searching, that we have the right keywords for them. So what we do with that is, once we know what keyword list, so what I just showed you, and we know some stages that they're going to go through, which I'm going to show you in a second, we can make sure that we have content created for that stage, and that it's optimized for the keywords. So this is a very, very simple user journey. That there's the awareness stage. Awareness, I have a problem. My car broke down, I need a new car. Consideration, well, what kind of car should I look at? Decision, car dealership near me, I'm ready to make a purchase. But I'm going to show you two examples. So let's say, though, unfortunately, I was in an accident and now I need a lawyer. So I was in a car accident, I need a lawyer. So my awareness is, I think I need to contact someone because I have a pretty big injury and I know I need some help. So I might be looking at, what my first search is, what do I do after a car accident injury? Well, that's a no intent. So if I was a personal injury lawyer, I would want to make sure, and all these are searchable phrases, by the way, but I'd want to make sure I had content that addressed that, what to do after a car accident injury. Well, then the benefit, so if I look that up and one of the things I see is, well, people, it's recommended to contact an attorney, well, I might want to dig a little bit deeper. So let's do some consideration. Well, what are the benefits of hiring a personal injury lawyer? And this, again, is just pulling from my keyword list. So what on my keyword list makes sense? And then I create content for that. And then the decision. So now I know I do want a lawyer, so a personal injury lawyer near me. And you need to make sure you have content optimized for that. So it shouldn't be the same content for each of those stages. It should be separate content. So here's another example, because I keep using cars, but awareness. Okay, I need a car, but I want a fuel efficient car. I know that's what I want. And then you do research and you're going to know some information. But then I'm trying to figure out, do I want a new car or a used car? So I'm still going to look at some content, and you would want to do your own research to make sure it's a no versus buy intent. So I'm going to have some content optimized for that. And then the stage of the journey where car dealers near me, ready to make a purchase. Well, I need to have a page that's optimized for that. So that's how it's done. Again, all of this is intertwined. So the psychology behind it, again, I'm just going to recap. Know your user, understand the user intent, make sure that you know the demographics behind the keywords. Then you're going to get into even like, how do we adapt to this dynamic environment? How do we put keywords into the right journey stage? But let's not forget voice search. And voice search is like that extra layer on top of everything else. So this is actually an older statistic, but from 2018. In January 2018, so let's fast forward 2 more years. You know this number is so much bigger. But there were over 1 billion voice searches made. So those are things like talking to your phone, which I've dialed in, so you see that there, but it's talking to Siri on my phone. It's talking to Amazon Alexa. It's talking to Google Assistant. It's talking to these different smart devices, but the numbers are just going up. And so the question I get a lot now from clients is, well, how do we optimize for voice search? The good news is that if you've always kept the user in mind and all the things I've showed you, you've been optimizing for voice search without realizing that you've been doing it. Because voice search is really about the longer query. You are not going to pick up your phone and, let's say, I'll give you an example because I had this happen a while back where we were driving to my grandmother's birthday party. I had my nephews in the car and without a flat tire. Well, my nephews decided to change the flat tire, but they weren't going to pick up their phone and say, Siri, tire. No. Why would you say that? You're going to say, how do you change a flat tire? You're going to say a phrase. We talk to our phones like we do a conversation. We talk to Alexa like it's a conversation. So it's going to be those longer queries. And we're also going to consider questions because that's a huge part of voice search is people are going to ask questions. So what's interesting is depending on the type of question, it shows the intent, meaning they're ready to make a purchase. So if there's a phrase you're going after that's a question that's like what or who, well, that's someone's just interested, they want to know something. If they search for how, well, they might be moving farther down that journey, but they're still wanting to know something. When, well, now they're getting a little bit more into like, okay, I think I'm ready to take action. If they're searching for something of where can I buy a new car? Where can I buy a used car? They're ready to act. And so you need to keep that in mind when you're thinking about this. These are the extras for voice search, but for voice search, we want to answer questions. So you need to identify a frequently asked question. So what is something someone is searching for? And you need to answer it simply and directly. That's huge. This is also going to help you get into featured snippets. So if you know the exact question someone's searching for, make that your H1 on your page. And then that first paragraph, answer the question. So how do I buy a car? Well, don't build this whole big, blog post at the very end. You tell them how to buy a car. It's how do I buy a car? And then right underneath, you're going to get right into it. So just another example, I really like coffee. And so featured snippet, how to make cold brew in a French press. Well, this article itself, when you clicked on it, had how to make cold brew in a French press. That was right there in the H1, and then it answered it right away. That's important. Now there's some other things too, and if you've done any research on featured snippets, it's not that hard, and there's no guarantee you're going to show up. So featured snippets, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, that's the spot in Google search results that shows up before their traditional results. And so this is golden real estate, it really is. So you can do a few things. You can check the SERP in incognito mode using Chrome. You're going to look at if there is a featured snippet, is a paragraph or a list. If it's a paragraph, if one's already shown up and it's a paragraph, well, then you need to try to compete by creating a paragraph that answers it. If it's a list, well, great, just create a bullet point list. If there's nothing, then I would likely just do a paragraph, but make it short. So keep it under 50 words, the first paragraph that answers the question. But you're going to also want to use schema. So you can go to schema.org and you're going to want to use article schema. So mark that up so it's very apparent what's on your page. And that's just the extra that you can do to show up. But again, there's no guarantees, but it does work, and that's going to help you on the voice search side of things. So I'm not going to show you the whole video of this, but one tool that you can use if you're trying to identify common questions is Answer the Public. And it pulls from Google API and Bing API, and it's using Google Autosuggest or the Bing Autosuggest. And so it's looking at those questions people are asking associated with whatever phrase you put in. So you don't have to try to read all of this. You could actually, if you're using the tool, just download a list. But we know, if you know anything about auto-suggest technology, you're starting to type in the keywords and there's a drop-down. So all of that drop-down, it's real-time, real queries people are searching for. So just more statistics if I need to convince you on voice search. 46% of voice search users are going to look for a local business. So if they're talking into their phone, it's likely a local business that they're looking for. So if you're a local business, this is especially something to consider. Here's just another example. So I'm going to show you different devices because this, again, just makes you think about voice search. So let me replay that in case you missed it, but this is using Google Assistant. So if I wanted to know, I asked Google Assistant, find a car dealership near me. Okay, so I got results. Find a car dealership near me, and I get some results there. Great. Well, we know Google Assistant is pulling from Google. So we see that there. But now let's say that I switch voice assistant. And this is an important, just like we don't have a ton more to go through, but this is really one of those, like, hopefully an aha moment for you when you're thinking about voice search, especially for your local business. Now, let's say I use Siri and I search for the exact same thing. Okay, so you're still like, what's the deal? Do you notice anything about those two? There's different results. This is huge. And so I am switching a little bit because now I'm talking about local SEO, but really the whole concept of psychology and voice search and users, this is still part of it. So if we're a local business, we better make sure that we know that no matter what type of voice assistant someone is using, we better make sure that we're showing up there. And the reason there's different results, Cactus Jack, I'm in Arizona, so everything's cactus, right? So Cactus Jack, well, that's not here in Apple, and I didn't move locations. I was in the exact same spot when I did the search. But these are different sources that are getting pulled from. So for Google Assistant, it's obviously pulling from Google, so Google Maps. For Siri, it's pulling from Apple Maps. So we need to make sure that we've done our due diligence and optimize our listings on each of those too. With that, and it's funny because I just said Siri, so my watch went off. So with that, I want to open it up for questions and answers. And I know that there was a couple that came through, it looked like. And so I'd love to answer those. And then also, just to give you my contact information. So I would love to stay connected. My favorite thing is imparting my knowledge, as I've been doing. And so I do a lot of these kind of trainings and just sharing my knowledge. But I also even train SEO teams. And so if you're in a position where you need help training your digital team, I'd love to help you with that. So you can connect with me via email, you can call me, and you can also follow me on Twitter too. So, all right, so let's move on to our questions.
First, let me tell you huge thanks for this amazing presentation. I've made actually a lot of notes, and I hope everybody learns something new.
Oh, good.
I'm sure. How do you handle looking at competitive keywords? Does that factor in your search?
If I had all day to go over this information, I would have gotten to all of that, but absolutely. And so, and again, that's where like SEO ranking is really going to help you too, because you're going to want to look at competitors and do some analysis. But what I'll do, and I do it on, okay, I'm just going to be very practical in answering that question. So when I'm doing keyword research for the very first time on a project, I will also look at competitors. Like that's part of it. Like I'll look at some of their keywords they're ranking for, and I'll add those to my list if they make sense. Then on a practical standpoint with my clients, usually like every quarter, I'll go back and I'll do more competitor analysis to see if there's other keywords that now are popping up with my competitors. And I'll just make sure there's nothing I'm missing out on. So I'll factor those back in. And especially as I was mentioning, like with the pandemic right now, like things are changing so much. And so I did that research for a client, again, that is an online training. And we realized that like, gosh, some of these competitors are going after like these particular topics and phrases that we hadn't thought about. So let's look at that too. So it's part of the process. I just tend to do it in the beginning of a project, and then every quarter, unless something comes up, I'll do it more often.
Okay. Yeah, we have actually a lot of questions coming in, so we'll try to pick some of them, guys. Yeah, so Tim is asking, I'd like to do some keyword research and wondered how many keywords I should optimize for in a how-to article.
Oh, and a how-to article? Well, my general rule of thumb, again, I'm going to be very practical because I always create spreadsheets for each page we're trying to optimize for. I will do usually 2 primary keywords for a page, and then I'll do what's referred to as secondary keywords. So I'll just try to mix in, unlike when I showed you SE rankings, when I put in fuel efficient car and you saw some there's other keywords related, I'll mix some of those in too. So I tend to do 2 primary keywords, I just got 2 primary keywords, and then I'll do maybe 2 more that are secondary keywords. But if I'm trying to figure out, just to step back though, like with the intent, because remember I was really showing you to put in 1 keyword to figure out whether it's a no versus buy intent. Even though I might have 2 primary keywords, there's still likely 1 that I care more about than the other. And that's what I'm going to use in that exercise that I showed you. So hopefully that answers the question, but that's what I do personally.
With featured snippets, isn't it likely that most users won't click on to the website, and therefore it's hard for us to track?
Okay, yes. I have a love-hate relationship with featured snippets, like most of you do. Probably like most of you, I did not like them when they first came out. It's like, great, now no one's going to go to the site because they're just going to read the result. And then me as an SEO, how am I supposed to track my result, like you just said? that my view has changed over time, just like a lot of other people, because a lot of users look at that, and even though they might not click, they see your URL listed there, and it's that whole, like when they see it, it's a signal going to psychology of that if you are showing up there, they don't know how it works, right? So they think the fact that you're showing up there, that you are the most credible expert on that topic. That must be why Google has you there. So it's still going to help you in a branding perspective. Now, from a how do I measure it? Well, you'll know. I mean, you can, using tools and you're monitoring your keywords and rankings, you can still see how you're showing up. And if you need to show proof that like we are in the featured snippet, we'll go and take a screenshot of it and put those in your reports too. You know, so I mean, but I do still try to go after them, even with that. Like I said, it is, to me, it's a big credibility signal, and you can just show in terms of tracking that you're ranking for that particular phrase.
Would it be a good idea to focus only on the final stage of the user journey, which is the bottom of the funnel, and create content only for the bottom of the funnel keywords? Would it help maximize conversions?
I would rather every time someone searched at no matter what stage they were in, that they kept finding me. Like that they found me when they first did their search, and they found me as they were like going through the consideration process. Like my website kept coming up over and over again, because then when they get to the final stage and they're showing you again popping up, it's at that point you're like, okay, this is obviously the company to hire, because they keep showing up, they're there, they're answering my questions along the way. So I would focus on every step of the journey. And if it's an issue of resources that's hard for you to do, I mean, even at the very least that you had one page on your website for each of like just the 3 simple stages, you're going to be in a good spot. So I would want, if it were me, I'd want to show up at every stage.
Do you have any tips on how to create the content outline based on this research?
Yeah, you know what, I'm trying to think about this, because I wouldn't even mind sharing, they're my internal documents and templates, but I wouldn't mind sharing that. So maybe that's something, Julia, we could do as a follow-up too. I can just, maybe I'll just upload it to my site and share it. But again, because I'm very practical with all of this and very like step-by-step. So I take all the things that we just talked about, and I have generally two different documents. I have a master spreadsheet where it has the pages of the website that I've worked on and the keywords. So it's my keyword mapping document. And then in that document, so I'll have the page itself, whatever topic it was. I'll have a column that has my primary keywords, a column with my secondary keywords, and then I have a column that says intent. Like first, so I know it's a no versus buy. And so that's like my master spreadsheet. And then because I used to do a lot of content writing, but I don't anymore. But when I give actually that information to my writers, I just have a Word document with a little table at the top that says, you know, topic, keywords, and then it'll get into like what they're creating. So like if it's an article and they need to know, you know, it's like the no intent. I don't get into no versus buy, because they're gonna be like, I don't know what you're talking about. But I get into this is an informational article, or this is a blog post, or this is a product page. But I can figure out a way to share just some of my spreadsheets and documents. I feel like as a community, we just need to share our knowledge. That makes us a lot better in SEO. Just come together, share what we have, and I'd be more than happy to do that.
I would like to thank you once again, Mindy, for being with us and hosting this event. That's it for today, and take care. Bye-bye, everyone, and see you soon.
Bye.